Daily Tech News Show is made possible by its listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Logan Larson, Mike Akins, Norm Fazekas, and Soren. On this episode of DTNS, Microsoft announces Copilot Plus PCs that rival Macs in battery life and speed while supercharging AI into every part of your device. Plus, did Apple just save journalism or doom it? This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, May 20th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
And from somewhere near your U.S. state capital, your U.S. Capitol, your boy, Big Chris Ashley, is back.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Man, I saw that May 20th, and I'm like, why is May 20th? Why is that ringing a bell? Why is that? It's because of the Microsoft announcement. I've had that date in my head for like months now. That like, don't forget.
And they brought the heat too, man. It was amazing.
They did. We're going to talk all about that in just a couple of minutes. Let's start with the quick hits. OpenAI has paused one of its pre-trained voices for ChatGPT called Sky. That's the one you heard in OpenAI's demonstration of GPT-4o last week. It was widely compared to the performance of Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her. In fact, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, even just posted the word her on Twitter. In a blog post, OpenAI wrote, quote, "We believe that AI voices should not deliberately mimic a celebrity's distinctive voice. Sky's voice is not an imitation of Scarlett Johansson, but belongs to a different professional actress using her own natural speaking voice." I feel like that's the big surprise a lot of people are going to have, is to find out that these voices were actually trained on single humans. It also explained how it selected those voices and that it plans to bring more voice options to GPT-4o down the line.
Mac is selling an 8 kilobyte, yes, 8 kilobyte USB drive for €30 and uses ferroelectric RAM or FRAM. FRAM uses very little power, has rapid write speeds, and most importantly, can last more than 200 years. By comparison, NOR flash can only last up to 200 years, and more usual NAND flash lasts 16 to 20 years. It's quite expensive, hence the low capacity. Its intended use include cryptocurrency keys, of course, but also things like geocaching data.
That's kind of cool, although very small. Sensor Tower estimates that ByteDance's AI chatbot called Doubao now has more monthly users than Baidu's ErnieBot, making it the most popular chatbot in China. Doubao had almost 9 million downloads on iOS up through April, compared to Ernie's 8 million. ByteDance says Doubao has 26 million monthly active users in China, and by comparison, OpenAI reports ChatGPT has 6.7 million users in the US. And in case you don't already put this together, ByteDance also owns TikTok.
Now, if you had a recent breakup, don't fret. It's going around. LG has ended its VR headset partnership with Meta 3 months after the partnership was begun. LG is now looking for a new partner, and Amazon is rumored to be a frontrunner in that scenario. Amazon would provide subscribers through Prime, and LG might use Android for the operating system as well. LG plans to have a headset out sometimes in 2025. Other companies pursuing partnerships include Samsung with Google and Qualcomm and Sony with Siemens.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved Neuralink to implant its chip in a second person. Neuralink submitted a plan to address shortcomings in the first implant that caused some of the wires to move and reduce connectivity. Neuralink hopes to make the second implant happen sometime in June. More than 1,000 people applied for the trial, and the subject will be selected from around 100 who actually qualified for the procedure. And that is a look at the quick hits.
Semafor reports that Apple News Plus has become a major source of revenue for news publishers. Execs at Condé Nast, Penske Media, Vox, Hearst, and Time all told Semafor that Apple News Plus makes up a substantial stream of the direct revenue. Apple subscribers pay for Apple News Plus either on its own or as part of a bundle with subscriptions like Apple Fitness and Apple TV. Can Apple save journalism too?
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I was trying to do too many things at once with my audio stream, and my laptop just did not like it.
Laptop said no.
Yeah, so I thought this was a really interesting article. Semafor has been doing some really good reporting like this, and I thought it was interesting that they were showing millions of dollars, which, is actually not a lot in the world of technology, but it's enough for publications, especially smaller publications, to provide a big chunk of their revenue coming from Apple News. And I think that's a good thing, especially when you think about the fact that Facebook is actually not even using news in Canada because Canada passed a law requiring them to pay for it. They're talking about backing off of that same agreement that they had in Australia to do the same. And Apple from the beginning has said, we will pay you. Now the New York Times, bowed out of that, right at the beginning, because they want to have a direct relationship with their users. They don't want Apple in the middle of it. But for some publishers, that's fine. They'll be happy to get a lot of money from Apple in exchange for giving up a little bit of control over that relationship. Not everybody's as big as the New York Times and can afford to live without it. What do you make of this, Chris, as the idea of Apple News being sort of the savior of journalism revenue?
Yeah, I actually find this pretty darn interesting, and actually kind of happy for it because you constantly looking at news reports and finding out things aren't exactly what they seem, and then you see more and more smaller organizations getting bought up. So if you find that there's a actual viable revenue stream, then perhaps we can just get back to the nitty gritty of journalism where these guys can go gather facts and just report the facts. And, we can get away from all this opinion stuff. And the reason why that could potentially work and what makes me happy is the fact that on my iPhone, I look at the headlines on Apple News. I don't always click on it, but I use it as a quick reference, if you will, or a live tile, reference to Microsoft and Windows. I use it as a live tile, as a quick what's going on in the world. Let me just peek in real quick and see what type of headlines are popping up. So I've always kind of trusted what I saw in the headlines in there and never even thought twice about it. So the fact that it's actually able to generate enough ton of revenue for these guys could potentially mean that we can get back to some business here.
Yeah, the problem is there should be more than one way for these companies to get revenue. It's just as bad to have Apple be the supplier of all your revenue as it would be for any other single source. And we're not saying that Apple's supplying all their revenue, just a big chunk. But if they become dependent on that to support their operation at the level you're talking about, right? It becomes concerning for folks. I would like to see the equivalent on Android providing as much revenue as well. And Google has played a little bit nicer with publishers regarding Google News. So I wonder if they could create just as much of a revenue opportunity for publishers as Apple is. I'm sure they could. I think that it would be great if there were more independent providers of this. Feedly is out there kind of doing a similar thing. Perhaps they could step it up. But you're never going to get people to use it without putting it in front of them. And I think that is kind of the success of Apple News is it's there in your operating system. When you swipe right, you just see it, whether you meant to or not. And if you're subscribing to a bundle because you wanted to get Apple TV Plus or Apple Fitness or Apple Music, it might just be included, in which case now you're sending money to publishers and you might start using Apple News Plus just because it's there.
Right. I like that, and you make a absolute very important statement there, which is these guys should not be solely dependent on any one stream or source of revenue as well, because then there's a incentive to maybe not report things the way they should be. But what I'm hoping is that this provides some glimpse into alternative streams that they should be going after, such as Google and maybe any other platform, or just these guys need to get on the ball, essentially, because, I really, most of my news now is podcasts that with people that I think I trust, and even those guys, can make mistakes. So I am somewhat concerned over the future direction of just regular news.
Yeah. And getting regular news in front of people, I think shows that folks will use it if it's there.
Right.
It's just that people have gotten into the habit of, instead of sitting down at 5:30 or 6:30 for the evening news or picking up the paper off the front lawn in the morning, looking at Facebook, looking at X, looking at those apps. And there hasn't been an app that's been able to grab attention away from that.
Right.
And that's what it shows that Apple News is able to do. It's able to grab attention away from that. And like you said, when it's curated list of reliable sources, you tend to just look at it and say like, oh, okay, that's the actual news. And you don't have to spend as much energy trying to go, wait, is this real? Who's saying this? And that's way easier, and way better for your life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll have to see how this something we should keep an eye on and see how it develops, or if it even develops at all, or maybe it's just, an aberration.
Yeah. Does Apple save journalism and doom it at the same time by saving it? Apple now controls the news. I don't think anybody wants Apple in that position.
No, especially with them having recent lawsuits. It's like,
it's Apple's pretty fair most of the time. I'll give them credit, but they're a little prickly about themselves.
Sure, exactly right.
And you saw Jon Stewart out there saying, well, they didn't really like my particular topics of his news program. Granted, it was a comedy news program, but still,
right.
So it makes me a little uncomfortable if 100%. Apple were to be the only one. But if we have multiple competitors doing this and multiple platforms, then that's a nice check and balance on it.
Awesome. Exactly right.
Well, folks, if you have thoughts on this, you have feedback about anything that gets brought up on the shows, you can reach us on those unreliable social networks we were just talking about. We are at DTNS Show on X. We are at DTNS Show at mstdn.social on Mastodon. We're Daily Tech News Show on TikTok, and DTNS Pix, DTNS PIX on Instagram and on Threads. Just the day before Microsoft Build, their developer conference, kicks off, Microsoft gave a private announcement to journalists in Seattle. This was not streamed online for everybody to watch, but it was live blogged by folks like The Verge and Engadget. And they focused on their new AI PC platform. So this was a hardware announcement, but there's a lot of operating system level stuff that went into this, and integration of Copilot. They introduced the concept of Copilot Plus, because everything's a plus these days. Copilot Plus is the name of the PC platform that, if you meet standards that Microsoft has set out, you can call your PC Copilot Plus, and it will promise certain benefits to the user. So up to 22 hours of battery life, processes for AI built to be handled locally. They don't have to all be sent to the cloud. One of the keys is it has to have a neural processing unit with 40 TOPS of performance, 40 teraflops of performance or more. Snapdragon X Elite has 45, so Snapdragon X Elite obviously meets this, but they are also partnering with AMD and Intel, not just Qualcomm. So you're going to see 40 top NPUs from AMD and Intel coming later this year. Of course, all the OEMs are in on this. You're going to see these from Acer, Asus, Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. And the basic specs are pretty good. 16 gigs of RAM minimum, 256 gigs of storage, and that integrated NPU. There are native apps for ARM from Zoom, Chrome, Spotify, all the Adobe stuff available right now: Photoshop, Lightroom, Firefly, and Express. They demoed DaVinci Resolve running on one of these. And if you have non-ARM apps, there is a new Prism emulator that will run them pretty well. So they're saying it's better than Rosetta, which is a Mac's emulator for running x86 apps. The NPU powers live captions and live translations across any app. It's not limited to a particular app, in 40 languages. They have something called Co-Creator, a new feature where you sketch something and the creator will create it. And CapCut coming native to Copilot Plus, using some of that under the hood AI to be able to power your edits. We're going to talk a lot about the hardware and one particular feature, but quick impression of Copilot Plus as a whole.
So I actually kind of like what they did. I thought it was pretty interesting. The one thing I like about it right out the gate is we should mention that the 16 gigabyte of RAM and the 256, that's like the minimum to be able to get that name of a Copilot Plus PC. So, so which means that you're starting, no matter what, you start out with a pretty decent computer. And I think a lot of times these OEMs had always kind of cheapened on the hardware sometimes. And, the fact that there's a baseline that will force these guys to start out with decent hardware, I think is important when it comes to launching these new systems. But the idea of having a machine that can, offset some of the workload and have it directly on the device itself, really cool. The fact that these things are super thin and actually look nice, also super cool. They still have some, the whole, comparing to Apple, they need to get away from that. Just I think they'd be better served running in their own lane since they're trying to do something new here, as opposed to comparing themselves to other people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They did a lot of comparisons to the MacBook Air running on an M3 processor, and we all know the M4 is going to be coming to the MacBook pretty soon. They weren't comparing it to the MacBook Pro either. They were comparing it to the Air. But I think they had to do that on things like battery life, and they really hammered battery life because the conventional wisdom is if you want good battery life, get a Mac these days because the Windows-based PCs just can't match it. And what Microsoft wanted to make sure you understood today is now we can not only match it, we'll argue we can go better. But even if, how you slice and dice the data is different, we can match it. And I think that's important for them to get across.
Yeah, I think they made it important for them, but have you, you probably are different. I don't think I've ever purchased a device based on its battery life. Yeah.
No, I not specifically on the battery life alone, but it's definitely something that goes around where people are like, and that battery life and the speed. That was the other thing Microsoft hammered was when we offload processes to the MPU, it's so battery efficient that it's so efficient, you're going to get these processes done faster. That was one of the things that CapCut and Adobe were showing off, right?
Sure.
So they want to counter those two things when people are like, I don't know, you might want to get a Mac. I know it's a little more expensive, but the battery life's so much better and the speed is so amazing. And now Microsoft can say we're cheaper and our battery life and speed are equivalent, if not better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think about these type of announcements in two lenses. The announcement that's for us, where we get excited about all the geeky stuff. But I also think about all the people that I support that don't know nothing about these type of things, and they just want something that works, does what they need to do, and out the door. And I wonder how if they're leaving these type of translations for us to get to them, or are they ever going to come up with some marketing for the regular person that is like, hey, this thing lasts long enough, it's strong enough to do what you need to do, and boom, away you go.
Good question. One of the features that is coming only to Copilot Plus PCs is recall. This is one of the features that they were demonstrating what you can do with Copilot Plus. Copilot Plus is integrated all through the platform, but recall remembers everything you've done on your computer. So with your permission and locally on the device, it logs your apps, your communications and live meetings, the websites you visited, etc. You can delete that content. You can exclude specific apps, but whatever you let it contain, it will let you find things just by asking Copilot. Where was that purple presentation? They showed an example where it was able to find the purple presentation because it knew what you were talking about. So this is way better than the Windows 10 timeline from before because you've got the large language model smarts on it. Copilot integration in Windows on Copilot Plus PCs also can just suggest things when you're in settings. You're like, wait, how do I change the display again? It can tell you. They showed it playing Minecraft, and Copilot Plus was giving suggestions on what to do next in Minecraft and how to maximize playing. And again, this is not for specific apps. Copilot can just see what you're doing and then make recommendations. I know you were particularly impressed by the recall feature.
Yeah, so this really stood out to me. And as I find myself, launching the food truck business, and I have all these documents of these licenses that I'm applying in different counties and things that I've half started, like a menu I was working on. and I'm getting older at the same time. So figuring out, did I put that on my desktop? Did I put it here? Searching for stuff has become, a bit more of a daily thing. And the fact that this like spoke directly to me, even recently, where I have filled out an application, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where I put it. Was it in email? Was it on my desktop? Was it in OneDrive? And oftentimes you can search and it finds it, but there's those times when you search for something and it absolutely doesn't find it, even though you've put it in correctly. So that's why I'm relatively, probably the most exciting thing that they announced to me was this actual function. If it works though, but I don't want to go negative, right. But it's a fair thing to say. They always come out with this, it should work, and then it doesn't work quite like it's supposed to. But I do love the fact that, the first thing you think of is who's getting my data, who's going to be able to correlate it. But they're like, all that information is stored locally on the machine, so they have no access to it, from what it sounded like. They promise, at least. I love it. I love the build, with the more and more stuff that you're doing on a computer and finding all that stuff all at once. Really, really good idea. And to use AI. And this is the type of stuff that AI is built for, right? At least in today's context.
Well, and specifically, Copilot Plus PCs have that NPU with 40 tops, means that it can conceivably do this on device without ever sharing your data out to anyone else and keeping it encrypted and all of that. So you're right, it needs to be audited, and we need to see, does it really work in person as well as it worked in that demo? Because demos always show you the best parts of things, but
that's right.
Seems promising. And for me, it tracks as like, those are the kinds of things large language models can do. And if you set it up right, I could believe it would be able to do that. I guess the alternative is like, a third party could do that. You can already get third party apps that do that on a Mac, but this is built into the operating system. So whether you're like, I'd prefer it to be in a third party, or whether you're like, no, I want it integrated so it works as best as possible, is kind of the discussion there. We also got hardware. The Surface laptop, or rather the Copilot Plus Surface laptop, has thinner bezels, no notch now. Camera is in that thinner bezel, 13.8 and 15-inch touchscreen displays. Touchscreen, they made a big deal out of that because the Macs don't have touchscreens. Can support up to 3 4K monitors, has Wi-Fi 7, HDR, Dolby Vision IQ on the display, and now finally a haptic touchpad, which it did not have before. Battery life, they mentioned 22 hours of local video playback. Again, touting all that big battery life, peak performance, they kept hammering all of that, nearly double the battery life of the Surface Laptop 5. And then the Surface Pro, the Copilot Plus Surface Pro, has a detachable keyboard with bold key set options for accessibility. They claim it's 90% faster than the Surface Pro 9, also adds 5G support to the Wi-Fi 7, and an OLED with HDR display, which the previous Surface Pro did not have. Quad HD ultra-wide front-facing camera and a 4K rear-facing camera, and that slim pen stores at the top of the keyboard still for charging. So you have a pen for this as well. What'd you think of these?
I thought these were actually pretty cool looking as far as specs are concerned. I do like the fact that they have an optional keyboard now, that detachable keyboard. I thought that was slick. And something, when I saw it, I was like, wow, this really should have been there from the start. I think the price of that keyboard, I think it was like $459. Outrageous. That's crazy high. Yeah. But nonetheless, why do I have to be up on the screen when I can push that thing back and relax a little bit when I'm typing? So I really like that feature a lot. Super thin. They look thin as ever, so which means they're light. And as a guy that has traveled with servers in my backpack all the way down to a Surface Mini, I lighter is always better.
Yeah, it is interesting that the Pro designation is a 2-in-1 where you have to buy the keyboard. But what that did was allow them to say both of these models start at $999. Right. One of them without a keyboard, so it's really starting at $1,500 ish. But yeah, I thought these were both exactly what Microsoft does. They don't look that much different. There's not a big design change other than the thinner bezel, maybe a little more rounded corners. But that's not what this is about. This is to demonstrate how well Windows works. And in this case, how well Copilot Plus works when it's on a Copilot Plus certified piece of machinery. So yeah, these start at $999. You can pre-order them right now. They start shipping on June 18th. But you're going to have a whole lot of others to choose from. The Acer Swift 14A, the Asus VivoBook S15, bunch of Dell models, including a new XPS 13, new OmniBook Copilot Plus PC from HP. Lenovo's launching a Yoga Slim 7X and a ThinkPad 14S. And Samsung's got 2 devices that can work with Galaxy phones as well. All of these are cheaper than a Mac. That was the message. Prices vary on these. Release dates are roughly sometime in June. Some of them specifically on June 18th, same as the Surfaces. Some of them a little more vague. But you're going to have immediately a bunch of these. The interesting thing also, Chris, all of these running on Qualcomm processors. We are not seeing the Intel and AMD stuff until later this year.
Yeah, that is the exciting part and the scary part, right? Because as a guy that had Windows RT and saw Microsoft attempt this stuff before, it's exciting to see the leaps and bounds that they've made, and they just like before, they did have some of these big vendors that actually partnered with them and created native version of their apps. So if they can continue to foster those type of relationships and keep the apps coming, and they do have a virtual emulator to allow regular apps to run too. So it'll be interesting to see how that thing works as well. But overall, I think Microsoft had a pretty solid announcement, pre-announcement, I should say, today.
It's a tradition for me to bring out my Surface RT every time we have a Surface announcement, which, by the way, detachable keyboard back then too.
Right.
That was
detachable, but it didn't work once you detached it.
The detaching worked.
The detaching worked. It became a frisbee. So you had a frisbee. All in one.
RT. The promise is finally realized. That's
somebody at Microsoft is like, I told you we were going to do this.
Or Panos Panay, who's no longer at Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's check out the mailbag. Our Spanish language host. If you didn't know, there's a Spanish language version of, kind of a cross between DTNS and Daily Tech Headlines called NTX, Noticias Tecnología Express, hosted by Dan Campos. And Dan wrote in wanting to point out a little bit about the race for streaming in Latin America is heading to a place where bundles are also the hot item. Dan writes, I was wondering about who wins and losses with such wonderful offerings. In a good part of Latin America, Mercado Libre offers a couple of interesting options for their customers within Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Uruguay, Brazil, Mexico, Peru, and Ecuador. Mercado Play is a free service with a lot of series and movies with ads included, similar to Tubi or Pluto TV. Just need to have a free Mercado Libre account to use it. It also has a limited offering of Disney Plus shows. Meli Plus or Meli Mas for 129 pesos, which is just under $8 US, gets you a similar offer to Amazon Prime. You get free delivery for what you buy on the Meli digital marketplace and includes access to Disney Plus and Star Plus, which is the local version of Hulu, as well as a free year on Deezer Premium, the music service. In comparison, the Disney/Star combo costs 269 pesos, which is about $16 US, if you get it directly from Disney. So bundling it in with Meli Plus is a lot cheaper. If you decide to use Meli Plus as your streaming platform, you also get a 30% discount on Max, Paramount Plus, ViX Premium, or all three. But your individual accounts for the services can't connect if you decide to use Meli Mas. This makes me wonder if the bundles announced by Disney and Warner or Comcast with Paramount and Netflix can be as attractive as the ones offered by third parties. There are other services like MVS Hub, where you can pick and choose different streaming services, and you can save about 20 to 30, but they don't offer Disney. Last but not least, in Mexico, regulatory organizations such as COFECE, the Federal Economic Competition Commission, have already issued warnings and want to regulate the streaming streaming offerings from Amazon and Mercado Libre, mentioning that including streaming to their delivery subscriptions is anti-competitive to other digital marketplaces. You can check NTX episode 350 and 361 if you want more information about that. Thanks for keeping us up to date, Dan. This is good.
Yeah, very cool. And all those options. It seems like Rob Dunwood's internet. Have you ever heard him talk about how many different options he has for internet in his area?
Yeah, I know. I'm so quite jealous because I technically have multiple options, but most of them are very low bandwidth, like DSL or some kind of over-the-air 5G service that's flaky. Yeah. I look forward to living like Rob Dunwood someday.
I know, right?
Well, thank you, Chris Ashley, for coming in on a Monday and breaking down this Microsoft stuff with us. Folks want to find out more about what you have going on. Where should they go?
Oh, come find me on Barbecue and Tech, talking about barbecue and the technology we use to make it better. And oh, look at that. And me and the boys always hanging out on SMR podcast. Come check us out over there as well.
Yeah, both of those fantastic listens. Barbecue and Tech will make you hungry, though.
That's right.
You do have to be aware of that.
Eat first.
Patrons, stick around for the extended show Good Day Internet. Is the internet mostly bots now? We're going to explore the dead internet theory. Stick around. You can also catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow talking about AI and the future of zero unemployment with Andrew Main. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.